My family warned me I was dating a gold digger and I ignored them. 10 years later, I see they were right. I met my wife, Annabelle, when we were in college. My family was lower middle class and I was hustling to make sure student loans didn't kill me post-graduation. At first, everything seemed great. She was truly my rock through some really hard times. I struggle with anxiety and depression, as well as imposter syndrome. She had her own struggles too and I thought we fit well. My parents and sister always told me that while she seemed nice enough, something was off. This only increased when Annabelle dropped out of college and shared her plans to become a housewife and stay-at-home mom one day. So she didn't need a degree. Back then, there was no guarantee that I would have a high-paying job, but I also didn't mind her staying home with our future kids. Then, I got an offer for my dream job, 6 figures, company car, travel, the works, that also pay for me to obtain my master's, something that seemed out of reach considering I was drowning in student loan debt. I could finally move out of my parents' house and get one of my own. I used part of my signing bonus to buy an engagement ring for Annabelle. Because I began dating her prior to the money, I never imagined that she was with me for anything else. She loved me when I was a broke college student. We had planned our futures back then. How was it different? My family tried to point out the red flags. Annabelle planned an over-the-top, expensive wedding. She wanted the biggest house she could find. My signing bonus was drained rather quickly and I was worried about not saving enough. I constantly told her to slow down. We don't need the best of everything. And she would, for a while, then it'd pick up again. We had 2 children together, who are now 8 and 4. The big spending got worse when they came along, but again, I was okay with it. I was making good money, we could afford it. Annabelle grew up in a similar situation as me, so I figured she just wanted to spoil the kids. Then, I got laid off from my job. It wasn't out of nowhere. The field I'm in has slowly begun to dwindle over the years. I stayed on as long as I could, but at this point, the company is going under. Annabelle was worried when I relayed the news, but I informed her that we had our savings. We'd be okay until I found work again. I was hired at a new company in a similar but different field within a month. The catch? I am making significantly less. It's enough to live off of. We can stay in our house. But things need to change. I pointed out our kids can't go to private school anymore. We can't take multiple lavish trips a year. No more frivolous spending. She wasn't happy, but again, I gave her grace. It's a big adjustment, even for me. Just 2 months after I started at my new job, Annabelle came to me and said, "I don't think I can do this anymore." I was taken off guard and we had several discussions. That amounted in her taking the kids to be with her mother while we took a break. I already knew our marriage was over. No one can come back from a break unscathed. Sure enough, a few weeks after she moved out, she told me she wanted a divorce. She claimed we had grown apart, said I worked too many hours at my last job and I was never around. While it's true, I did work a lot. I was home every night for dinner. We had all of the weekend together. I traveled often, but she always came with me up until our oldest started elementary school. She never complained about a damn thing. In fact, I once said I was tired from working a long week and I felt guilty that she was home alone with 2 kids, but she assured me she was happy. I asked her several times if it was about me losing money. She denied it up and down. She married me so young and needed to see what was out there. She put it all on me. Naively, I told myself that this was what happened when you marry your college sweetheart. You grow apart. I didn't want to believe that my entire marriage had been a lie. Within 2 weeks of filing for divorce, she was with someone new. The reality came crashing down. She tried to play it off as they just so happened to meet, but they moved fast. She was moving in with him within 3 months. They were engaged before our divorce was even final. This guy is a surgeon. He makes 6 figures a year. I don't know if the cheating began when I got laid off or before. I suppose it doesn't matter. We're divorced now. Due to my schedule, I only see my kids every weekend and I hate it. I regret not making Annabelle sign a prenup as she got half of everything. My family is aware that she's moved on and I know they have their suspicions, but we've never spoken about it. In the 3 years since the divorce, they have never uttered "I told you so," even though I deserve it. I went from loving Annabelle to despising her. I love my children very much, but I hate that I wasted 10 years on a woman who only wanted me for my money. I should have so much more saved, but she either squandered it on useless junk when we were married or took half in the divorce. God, I hate her. To my wife, I know you're in love with another man, and that's okay. Dear wife, I first met you when I was 19, I'm 34 now, but I still remember the moment I laid eyes on you. You know how people say, it was love at first sight? Well, I used to think it was a stupid overused cliche, but it happened to me that night. You were a Renaissance painting come to life, with your emerald green eyes, smooth, opal-like skin, and wavy blue-black hair. Your voice was like bells pealing, your smile, radiant and glowing. I was your first kiss, I was your first boyfriend, your first love, your first everything. We dated for 2 years before you broke up with me for the first time. Over some silly argument I don't even remember. We were split for a year, and then you came back into my life. We dated for nearly 3 years this time around before you broke up with me again when I was 25. You were scared by how fast our relationship was moving and wanted to be free. So I let you be free, but God, how it hurt me. We were practically engaged by that time. I was sketching out designs for a ring. I dated other women, but none of them were like you. You also dated other people, some good men, some mediocre, and some really, really bad. You cried in my arms after one of your boyfriends had yelled at you and left bruises on your cheeks. But one day, less than 2 years after we had last broken up, you told me you were engaged to one of the good ones. I went to your wedding. You looked like a queen, every bit as beautiful as the day I first met you. How your face lit up as you saw your soon-to-be husband. I always thought that when I attended your wedding, I would be the groom. Wedded bliss didn't last long for you. After just a few months of marriage, your husband passed in a tragic accident. You miscarried your child. This sent you spiraling into a whirlwind of depression, anxiety, and painkiller addiction. Yet I stood by you. I watched as you buried your husband and your unborn child. I watched as you collapsed onto the ground, watering the fresh earth with your tears. Some years later, we reconnected. You were recovered now, and more like the girl you once were. Your laughs were fewer and far in between, but they were still there. Your once youthful and innocent eyes were harder now, more weary, tired, but despite all this, despite everything, I still loved you. And deep down, you loved me too. For the second time before you turned 30, you were married to me. This time, sometimes, it hardly feels real. I wake up in the middle of the night and hear you breathing beside me, and a wave of pure joy washes over me when I realize that it's you. Still, I know that I don't have your heart completely. I know your heart is fragmented, and a piece of it is buried in a small graveyard by the sea. Your name is written on that tombstone as well, with your year of birth and a foreboding blank space after the hyphen. Some nights you wake up crying, and you will not tell me why, but I know why. Sometimes I know that when I wrap my arms around you, you close your eyes and pretend that it's him. I know that, and it's all right. I love you and that's all that matters. So as long as you love me too, love is an infinite resource, and your love for him cannot deplete your love for me. I know that. Finally got back at my ex-girlfriend who dumped me because of my size and destroyed my self-esteem. My ex and I had been together since we were 20, we grew together, became better partners, tackled problems, and were each other's first everything. But, out of nowhere, she dumped me last year, saying she wanted to explore better options. I was confused because our intimate life was great, 7 to 10 times a week. I'm a high libido guy in my physical prime, so it didn't make sense to me. She said she wanted to try bigger guys and that just shattered my self-confidence. I tried to convince her to stay but it didn't work. I reckon her friends influenced her. They're what you'd call size queens. I'm 5.9 inches and knowing it's slightly above average didn't help my confidence. After that, I became really self-conscious and lost my confidence around women. I was once a lively, outgoing guy but after the breakup, I felt like a shell of my old self. A few months ago, my close friend introduced me to this girl. She's caring, loving, and our personalities clicked instantly. She has more experience than me and had been a huge help to get over my trauma. We've explored new levels of intimacy, which I never thought was possible before, and I started regaining my self-esteem. Then, out of the blue, my ex messaged me from a friend's number. I had blocked her everywhere, saying she regretted leaving and wanted to get back together. I didn't reply. My new girlfriend noticed I was upset and asked what was going on. After I told her, she laughed and told me to get my best suits and clothes. I asked what she wants to do and she just told me to do what she said. She made me wear those suits and pose. She took my photos and short videos with her camera and I did the same for her. She also got dressed up. Then, she edited the photos and videos to mimic a meme video that parodies a Dior ad with Robert Pattinson. It was awesome. She told me to send it as the reply to my ex's message. I did it and after a few days everyone in our friend group had been talking about it. Apparently my friend found the video hilarious and sent it to everyone. Now, everyone's calling me a legend for that response and my ex, along with her size queen friends, has been silent and avoids me at gatherings. But the true legend here is my new girlfriend. She might see this post since she's a regular on Reddit. V, if you're reading this, I love you. I told my mother this morning that I would never forgive her, and everyone thinks I'm making a mistake. My mother and I, 21 male, used to be very close, closer than my father and I for sure, though I love my father. We're just very different people. He's a blue-collar outdoorsy type, and I've been working and volunteering at my local theater since I was 5. My mother always loved the theater, and we bonded over that love, along with a love for cinema, whereas my dad only ever watches National Geographic on the cable that he still has lol. Not to say that my father was unsupportive, just that he was different. My parents got a divorce when I was 17. They tried to keep the reasons for it from me, but I eventually found out that my mother had been in a long affair with one of my father's friends. As soon as I found out, I confronted her at her apartment. She pushed me out the door and said she wouldn't talk to me when I'm acting like this, and that is the last time I had spoken to her for years. I still saw her sometimes, in public areas, but I left before she could say anything. My dad still says that he doesn't want to be the reason that I lose someone I'm so close to, but I can't stand to look at her anymore, knowing she was doing something so vile for years. The effect that it had on my father is palpable. Like his life is over. They had been together since they were 14, and my father used to tell the story all the time that he knew even then that she was the only one for him, that they were soulmates. I used to wish I could find a love like that, and now I know it was always half a lie. Today she came to my work, and demanded to know when we were going to work past this, to know when we can make things what they used to be. As I walked her out of the building for a private moment, I got incredibly angry and asked her when she was going to uncheat on my father. She insisted that we could work through this, and that what happened didn't affect me, to which I laughed and said, unlike you, I'm affected by people I love being in pain. We kept going like that, until I eventually went off on her that we would never be reconciling because I don't want someone of such low class and character in my life. She didn't take it well, to put it frankly, and when I went back inside she was still sobbing in her car. Part of me feels bad, but the rest of me feels that maybe now she understands that she effed up. My dad and friends are upset with me, and say that I shouldn't push her away, for my own sake, but she's a collection of painful memories now, and she had her chance to tell her side. She didn't want it.
Fire me because I won't date your son? Fine, but you'll never see him again. I'm the youngest person in my workplace, being fresh out of college when most of the people around me are nearing retirement age. I didn't mind it much at first, but then, people started trying to set me up with their kids. At first, it was a little flattering because I got a few nice dinners out of it, but ultimately, I realized that I probably wasn't going to find the man of my dreams for my coworkers' children, so I kindly said that I didn't think it was a good idea for me to get my dates through other people like this. My colleagues respected my decision, mostly, and backed off. However, my boss heard that I wasn't going on dates anymore and took that to mean that I was ready to settle down for good. He began trying to convince me to go on dates with his son, but I thought that the power dynamics would be really weird if I ended up in a relationship, so I said no. Well, my boss didn't like that. He kept trying to get me to meet up with his son, even handing me his son's number. I eventually added the number to my phone with my boss watching, and I realized that I already had the contact saved in my phone. My boss's son was someone I had a few classes with in college. I actually knew the guy pretty well, and we used to be good friends. However, that didn't make me want to date him. Finally, my boss gave me an ultimatum. I could either go on a date with my son or not, but if I continued to refuse, then he would have to fire me for being a close-minded employee who wasn't open to change. Thinking he was bluffing, I refused again. Then, he actually fired me. He wasn't ready for what I did next. Fire me because I won't date your son? Fine, but you'll never see him again. Part 2. After my boss explicitly told me that I could either go on a date with his son and keep my job or lose both my job and the opportunity to date his son, I decided to call his bluff and said, again, that I wouldn't go on a date. Well, it turns out that my boss wasn't bluffing. My manager told me that I would be receiving my final paycheck, and that I should start looking at other jobs. I was stunned, but also incredibly angry. Since I already had his son's number and knew him from our time together in college, I called the guy up and asked him if he wanted to hang out again. He was surprised, but I played it off as just wanting to hang out for old time's sake. It seemed that his father never brought me up to him, or his multiple attempts to get us together. We made plans to meet at a local bar, and my date got really drunk. Like, really drunk. It seemed that life was not going well for him at all, which kind of explained why his dad was so pushy about trying to set him up with someone. Regardless, I listened to my old friend rant about his problems and actually felt a bit of a connection. It turns out that he's on really bad terms with his whole family, and he's trying to move out of town, but he has nowhere to go. I don't know if I offered out of pettiness or because I was actually starting to feel close to this guy again, but I told him that, since I was out of a job, I also was looking for a roommate and was down to move, particularly to a city nearby. The details haven't been finalized and we haven't found an affordable place to stay, but I think I might actually be moving in with this guy now. And the best part is that it'll take him out of the town with his stupid dad, where both of them will lose contact. I know this is petty and probably taking it too far, but, wow, it feels good to finally snap back at my old, stupid boss.
I bought my girlfriend silver jewelry. Now, she wants to break up? I come from a really wealthy family, which means that I had a very well-supported upbringing. But now that I'm an adult, I'm financially independent. All funds that are set up for me are tied up so that I'll only have access to them after I turn 30, which is fine, but it basically means that my wealth is entirely my own. This being said, I always try to give people similar gifts to what they give me so that I can match their price level without being overbearing. When my girlfriend gave me a silver promise ring for my birthday, I gave her a silver necklace and pendant for hers. I do this because being raised in such a wealthy household means that I still don't exactly understand rules around gifts and money, so it's easier to give back exactly what I receive. My girlfriend was visibly disappointed when she saw her gift, though. Apparently, she had been hinting for a really long time that she wanted tickets to a concert for a certain famous blonde musician. The thing is, these tickets would have been way more expensive than the gift she bought me for my birthday, especially since I would have to buy her two, not just one. I told her that it was ridiculous she would expect me to spend so much money, and she pointed out that I made more than her and usually spent more money on gifts for myself. She finally asked me if our relationship was going to be transactional, and I told her that it should be, since my family's wealth had nothing to do with this. She said it wasn't about my family's wealth. Now, she's saying that I'm less caring than she thought, and that she might not want to be in such a transactional relationship. I think she's acting ridiculous. Thoughts?